this revolution will come at a breathtaking speed. It will be like a tsunami.
We have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves.
Great reset.
Great reset.
Great reset.
Great reset.
Or reset.
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 Reset. Everything would be owned by, most likely, one of the many World Economic Forum partner corporations.
The future is not just happening. The future is built by us.
We have seen the signs of anger on the streets.
This great reset is as serious and as dangerous a threat to our prosperity, to your prosperity and your freedom, as we have faced in decades.
He looks like a kind grandfather, but looks can deceive. And he's been the confidant of kings, presidents, billionaires, prime ministers, and industry leaders for half a century. Likely you've never heard of Klaus Schwab, but he's probably one of the most influential people of all time. On the other hand, he's also been labeled as the evilest man on the planet, planning to transfer world power to an array of unelected, wealthy individuals. The question is, how true is it, and what's he done to get such a title? Looking closely at Klaus and all he's accomplished, he seems like an ordinary guy who's achieved extraordinary things due to his acute business acumen. However, once you take the veil off and pull back the curtain to see what's behind his fortune, it's nothing short of terrifying. But before we begin our story, we'll first travel back to 1938, where everything started. Klaus Schwab was born on the 30th of March 1938 to Eugen Wilhelm Schwab and Erika Epprecht in Ravensburg, a city in Upper Swabia in southern Germany. His father was a manager of an industrial company in the town. The family moved to Switzerland a few years later, where Klaus went to primary school. Finally, after World War II, the family returned to Germany, where he had his secondary school education. Klaus loved engineering and always wanted to be an engineer, primarily due to his father's influence. He pursued his passion by studying mechanical engineering at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. After earning his first degree in Zurich, Klaus furthered his studies at Harvard University, where he was eventually awarded a doctorate in economics. Not long after, he became a professor of business policy at the University of Geneva. There, he wrote a book highlighting methods for increasing productivity and growth across countries worldwide. He also served on the boards of several companies, including the Daily Mail and the Swatch Group. So why would a person with such experience and affluence be evil, you might ask? If anything, he seems like a genuine guy who's interested in making the world better. However, you might want to think about that again. But to understand this better, we need to fast forward to 2017, when Klaus Schwab bragged about his ability to infiltrate global governments. Back in 2017 at Harvard Kennedy School's Institute of Politics, he openly bragged about his ability to infiltrate global governments. He said his modus operandi was to install young global leaders such as Angela Merkel, Vladimir Putin, Justin Trudeau, and more on his organization's board. Speaking of the event, the German economist said, "But what we are very proud of is this young generation like Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, President of Argentina, and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets." He would also use the opportunity to boast, "I was at a reception for PM Trudeau, and I knew that half of his cabinet, or even more, are young global leaders as well, and it's true in Argentina and for the President of France." This would have been easier to overlook if this language of domination and penetration was limited to Schwab. Unfortunately, it doesn't end there. His organization, the World Economic Forum, also released a video that lauded the future of the masses who languished in penury but were still happy about it. To make matters worse, the organization began promulgating the pandemic as an avenue for a great reset. It was described as the coming together of different countries to facilitate a reorientation of social and economic policies. For the forum, the pandemic represented not only a rare and narrow window of opportunity to reflect and reimagine, but also an ability to reset the world to create a healthier, more equitable, and more prosperous future. In its opinion, we weren't going to be returning to the status quo after the pandemic, and the pandemic represented a point for global retrospection. The pandemic, as it were, signified a journey of no return. While some analysts called it a significant divide, others called it a profound crisis of biblical proportions. But one thing remained the same: the world as we knew it in the early months of 2020 was no more, and in the context of the pandemic, had been dissolved. Before we go farther down the rabbit hole, we should go back to 1971 when the World Economic Forum was founded. As a non-profit organization, it invited international business leaders to regular conferences. At the time, it was called the European Management Forum, and was focused on helping European business leaders emulate best business practices. Then things became more interesting after it expanded to include political leaders and changed its name to the World Economic Forum, colloquially known as Davos. The organization created the Davos Manifesto in 2020, outlining the beliefs and philosophies of its head, Klaus Schwab. This caught the attention of the world's economic capital, the United States, with 674 Americans attending its 2020 meeting, including American President Donald Trump. Following the 2020 meeting, the 280-page book The Great Reset was published, but the plan lacked specific details. Schwab spoke of plans for a wealth tax, climate change, the future of work, international security, ending fossil fuel subsidies. But it was difficult to precisely see what the Great Reset was in practice. This lack of clarity in the plan being put forward by an influential organization caused a fertile conspiracy to grow. As a result, many questions were asked, including whether unelected people like Schwab should have the privilege to make decisions that could transform the world economy just because they're rich. Meanwhile, many others argued the Great Reset was a strategy in the grand scheme of the leftist elite. They had orchestrated and planned the COVID-19 pandemic to restructure the world in favor of multinational corporations. But how true are these allegations, and is Klaus Schwab really infiltrating the government? You see, many conspiracy tales have been spun around an upcoming secret cabal making plans to take over the world's government. Fuel was also added to the conspiracy fire when Justin Trudeau used the reset term to describe the Canadian policy of the United Nations in 2020. He said,
"This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems."
Several videos also surfaced of Schwab hailing the Prime Minister.
I couldn't imagine anybody who could represent more the world which will come out of this fourth industrial revolution.
Going by that, the only conclusion is that Trudeau is a puppet who takes orders from his WEF masters under the guise of being a young global leader. Another young global leader worthy of note is Russian President Vladimir Putin, who's been accused of orchestrating Russia's war in Ukraine single-handedly. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's also been a shocking but troubling coincidence. The present president of the US, Joe Biden, used Build Back Better as his campaign slogan. Do you know who else used this as the slogan of his initiative? Mr. Great Reset himself, Klaus Schwab. With the involvement of essential stakeholders and world leaders, there's no doubt WEF, in conjunction with its head, is trying to infiltrate the world government one way or the other. Perhaps the most critical question now is what this all means for you and me. Schwab and his cohorts envisaged the Great Reset as an avenue to improve the world. However, many people sense something ominous and sinister about having all nations come together to make a great reset of capitalism. Schwab and his cronies have made it no secret they believe that much of the causality during the pandemic resulted from economic inequality. That's why the poor, unable to move with the tide, died in greater numbers. Because of this, they strive to create a world where leadership is in the hands of private, unelected individuals. Now you might be sitting on your couch thinking maybe that's not a bad idea. However, the further you go down this rabbit hole, the less innocent things begin to look. You see, the so-called plan to create a world where leadership is in the hands of private, unelected individuals is a terrible one. It only benefits the 1%, or in other words, the bigwigs. But they don't seem to care what the stats say or what this new world they are clamoring for means for the ordinary man. They also seem to have fooled the world into believing they have good intentions with their new Green Deal, which advocates for the decarbonization of the economy to fight climate change. This would promote the growth of green energy and arguably create millions of jobs. Maybe there are honest intentions here, but the truth is, it's all a ploy to infiltrate the governments they seek to control. Schwab suggests current world leaders are primarily incompetent, and he feels he was proved correct in 2020 when COVID-19 took the entire world by storm and forced the world to come together to find a solution. For him, COVID merely revealed the lack of coordination within the laid-down government principles. Klaus and his enablers keep talking about reshaping government, something private individuals obviously can't do without being democratically elected. Only then would they have the power to control policies and regulations. The truth is, the world is not new to seeing private individuals have some level of power. But ask yourselves, what have they done other than for selfish reasons? For example, internet wonderkid Mark Zuckerberg's companies have been guilty of selling user information on more than one occasion. It's alleged Bill Gates has been using perhaps the largest charity organization to evade tax. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson, some of the wealthiest men in the world, are in a space race, none of which seems to benefit ordinary people, but rather enrich their pockets. So what makes Klaus and his cohorts different from any of these men? If Schwab's vision is implemented, there would be fundamental changes to capitalism, and for socialists and free market supporters, this is nothing short of terrifying. And it won't only be terrifying, but could be catastrophic. Unfortunately for us, the Great Reset has already started and will get worse if all these psychopathic billionaires aren't stopped. This will not be where it ends. All the growth, power, finance, and democracy of the economy will be affected. Although there has been speculation, no one knows the outcome of this new economy management principle. Is it eventually an unsound initiative, or has it been doomed to fail from the start? Or is there more to this than meets the eye?